You're tuned in to The Last Radio Show.
Hello and welcome to The Last Radio Show. I'm John Lynch.
I'm Jenn Reilly.
And today we are going to talk about a subject that I know you're a big fan of, Jen. We are going to talk about Disney and Disney World specifically.
Yay!
You are a Disney girl.
I am. I've been going since I was 6 months old. When it opened in 72, I think, and we were there in 76.
Wow. So that's around the first time I think I went too. It was definitely sometime in the 70s. I've only been there. I've been there, I think, 4 times. How many times have you been there?
40 something.
So you definitely, I'm deferring to your expertise on this subject because you definitely got 10 times as many as I do visit the kingdom.
It's like a Northeast vacation spot. It was just like, that's what you did. You just drove down to Disney.
Down to Florida, go down to Disney. Absolutely. Yep. And you actually worked there for a while too, right?
I did. I did the college program when I was in school for about 4 or 5 months, I think.
Right. And what did you do when you were there? What was your job?
So my job, it was cool because when you went for the interview, you got to pick what you wanted. You could work at restaurants and it was really cool, but you weren't guaranteed. So I had actually picked, I wanted to work on one of the rides and I wanted to work on Splash Mountain. At the time, it was called Splash Mountain. And I got it. It was great.
Wow. So was that your favorite ride?
It was, yeah.
Is it still your favorite ride even after working there?
You know, it is. It's a great ride. Yeah, it was. It was even more fun because this is like an unknown thing, but sometimes people used to get out. They'd be scared. So before it's a big giant log flume. So before the log flume, they'd get out. And so we'd have to stop the ride and run through the mountain, like run with all the animatronics and everything. We would run and find the kid and bring them back. And oddly enough, the parents did not get out and try to find them.
They just wanted to stay on the ride.
They stayed on the ride. We're like, don't worry. On the loudspeaker, we're like, we will reunite you with your child when we get back.
Well, that's kind of dark. And you know, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the stories and a lot of the urban myths and some of the facts about Disney, the company and Disney World in particular, there's a little bit of a darkness to it. You know, there is a little bit, Disney movies have killed a lot of mothers and fathers.
Sure. Oh, goodness. The worst.
I mean, we've all been traumatized by Bambi's mom, and all the other moms and dads who ended up not making it out of the movie alive. But we're going to talk a little bit about some of the urban legends and some of the facts about Disney World. And I do want to start, since you did work there, one of the coolest things about it, which I know this is a fact, but there's a whole underground network underneath Disney World, right?
Yes, which was phenomenal. Like when Walt built it, he built it. The first floor of the Magic Kingdom is actually the tunnel, they call it, because you can't go under. It's built on a swamp basically. So
right. So the
whole first floor is this tunnel, and then the park's on top of it. And so the tunnel, it seemed so cool, and I couldn't wait to get in there. When I worked there, I was like, I'm going to finally see the tunnel, and it smells pretty bad because they use the tunnel as a garbage system to remove the garbage, and so there are certain corridors where you would go down, and you would be like, it's crazy. It smells so terrible. So that was like a disappointment. I was like, oh, it stinks. But it is a cool thing because they do use it so that you can stay in character, and so that your costuming stays in the land that it's appropriate for. So that's how you get around.
That's the legend too, and I assume it's a fact that Walt Disney, when he opened Disneyland out in California, which was of course the first park, he saw one day, I guess, a cowboy walking through the space park, and
ruined his illusion.
It shattered everything. Yeah, so it's like, no, we got to have an underground network kind of thing.
Yeah, and you'd get in trouble. You were not allowed to cross into another land with your costume. Like, it was not acceptable. You would really get in trouble.
Right. And it's kind of interesting too when you think about it too. It is, a very immersive experience when you're in Disney World. You do kind of feel like you're in Star Wars, or you're in, a Marvel movie, or you're in, Fantasia, or whatever it might be.
Right.
So, I guess it is important to keep that illusion going.
It does. And it does work because people just buy into it. I mean, they are just, they're in it and they believe everything. And it's just, they call it the bubble, the real Disney fans are staying in the bubble. That's
Right, absolutely. It's and buying into it is key too, because they want you to buy a bunch of stuff from it. And I know in recent years, the big thing has been like, getting the kids, like for the girls having the princess makeup and, getting
Mhm.
dressed up as a princess and, other characters for, the boys and the girls and
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
stuff. That's like
anything
become a
to
big thing,
sell.
right?
Yeah. Whatever they can sell you, they've got it.
Right. Absolutely. So talking about the construction of Disney World, I know when Walt was actually making the park originally, he set up a bunch of dummy companies to like buy the land around Disney World
Yes. Yeah, so they
because
wouldn't overcharge him.
right, because they figured like, oh, we got this guy, we can charge him whatever we want for his land. So he set up all these dummy companies to buy all the land, and they
Yeah.
own it's a big chunk of Florida that they
Oh,
own,
yeah. I
and
think is it twice the size of Manhattan? I think
I,
that there's, like,
something
some
like that.
crazy.
Yeah, it's a pretty big area, and
Yeah.
of course, now when I first went there in the '70s, it was just Disney World. There was no
Right.
Epcot even yet.
Yeah, the Magic Kingdom was it, and then they
Yeah,
had
the
the.
Magic Kingdom, right? That was it.
Yeah.
And then now they've opened what's it, Frontierland, right? And the
Well,
MGM studio,
yeah, the studios, and then they have, Animal Kingdom, and then they have, Epcot. So there's
right?
4 parks now, and there's 3 water parks, and
Right. And there's and the hotels obviously too.
yeah, and there's just countless hotels now. It's
Right,
crazy.
right. It's its own little world
And they
now.
have plenty of room to keep going too.
Right, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure
Yes.
they will add more to it. Now, one of the things about the construction that's kind of been kind of an urban myth, but there is some truth to it, is that the castle, the Magic Castle there in the center of Walt Disney World,
Mhm.
can be like folded up if a hurricane is coming up. They can take it down.
I do remember reading that, and
That
that's not true.
that's not true. That's not true. It would be a little some assembly required to put it back together,
Yes.
I guess.
However, I think the castle, although it looks brick, it's not. I think it's fiberglass, or it's
Right,
something ridiculous that it is. It probably could blow over, I guess. And
right.
it's not very. I mean, I'm sure it's constructed of wood, but it's not as sturdy as I think
Right,
you would think.
right. Yeah, it's definitely
It's not a
it's
medieval castle for sure.
right. No, it's they didn't have slave labor were
Yeah.
building it in medieval times. It's but it is kind of interesting too because I know when they designed the park, they did a lot of stuff with like depth perception and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Things are not quite as big as they seem
Yes.
when you first see them. It looks like this big giant thing, but then when you get up close to it,
Yeah.
it's not that big.
Exactly. Yep. And even the Magic Kingdom itself, they wanted to in the beginning they wanted you to think that you can only get there, that it was like an island. So they
Right,
didn't in the beginning they didn't have buses go there. They only had the monorail and the boats because they
right.
wanted you
Boats,
to
yeah.
right. And then at some point they were like, okay, too many people. We can't just because you have to park your car away and take one of these things to get there. There's no
Right,
parking lot. And
right.
so eventually they said, well, this is just too many people. So they allowed buses to go, they wrecked
Right.
the illusion, but
So you mentioned, in your time working there, you weren't in the big costumes. You were just
no.
you were themed to the ride you were on, but
Yes.
you weren't, dressed as Minnie Mouse or Goofy or any of those. Were you friends with any of the people who did that?
Yeah, I had a friend that worked there for years after being one of the costume men. I can't remember what he was, but yeah, he
That
loved it.
I guess you would have to because that's got to be a tough job.
The only thing they don't want you to pass out because you ever see those videos of the characters passing out, it's
Right,
very traumatizing. So they do keep like a person with them all times that there's like a sign like "Get me out of here" or "This kid's being a
right,
brat" or something that they can
right.
like escape.
So they have a bodyguard
Yeah,
essentially.
they definitely need them. Listen, you see Mickey Mouse walking down the street, it's like it could be Bono to somebody. It's like
Right,
mobs of
right,
kids just
right.
going after him. So yeah, it's pretty
I,
intense.
a few years ago, this maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I was in Disneyland out in California and they have Cars World there. And we went
Mhm.
there because my son loves the Cars movies. That was his favorite growing up. And they had Lightning McQueen, which was just a car. I mean, there was no person in it.
Uh-huh.
It was just, a regular car, but, it had the eyes going and stuff like that. And I remember they had like, certain times you could take pictures with it. And then they like moved them away. I'm like, why wouldn't they just leave the car sitting there? I mean,
Right,
there's
it's just a
nobody
car.
sitting in there. I mean, just, leave it. But they
Yeah.
actually like would take it away, and there would be like a group of people who walked it away, to kind of
Right.
keep people away. And then,
Yeah.
another character would come in kind of thing,
Yeah, it's
So,
like a celebrity
yeah.
sighting. Yeah.
But this was a car.
Yeah. Well,
There was no
it's
person in it.
Disney,
Now, I always thought this was an urban myth, but it turns out this is actually true. For the
Mhm.
characters, there was shared underwear that the company owned that you could only wear when you wear the costumes.
Yeah, that I didn't know.
They provided underwear, and this was apparently in the early days, so maybe this was before your time, but
Okay.
the actors used to share underwear because they
Oh.
had to be a certain, I guess, kind of fit of the underwear so it wouldn't show through the costume or bunch up, I guess.
Oh,
And
that's
there was
pretty gross.
communal underwear that now there still is special underwear that they have to wear, but each, I guess, employee gets their own stash of underwear that
Oh,
they
okay.
can
I wonder if
use.
they get to keep that underwear because the costumes you have to return every day. They
Right.
wash them there on site, and then you get a new one every day. But maybe they let you take the underwear home.
I don't know. I don't know. So, so what did they clean the costumes every night? Do you know?
Yeah,
Or
they
do
clean the costumes every night, and you got a fresh one in the morning when you went.
Okay.
And then there was
Yeah.
changing rooms too, so that's also kind of weird. Like,
Right. Every now and then you see pictures, and maybe it's with other places, maybe not Disney, because like you said, they work very hard to keep that illusion in place. But every now and then you see like a picture of some guy in one of these costumes with the head down on the ground. He's just there smoking a cigarette. Kind of
yes.
thing.
Oh, that's like, yeah. They do not want any of that happening in Disney. Like,
Right. That's got to be
that's
like
not
the
happening.
ultimate taboo right there.
As a matter of fact, we didn't have phones back then, like that we do now, but you weren't allowed any like filming down
Right.
in the tunnel. That was gonna you get things confiscated. People were getting
Right.
their cameras confiscated and stuff.
Right. It is amazing because, like, we're talking about this, and the tunnels are a pretty well known thing, I think, now by
Mhm.
most people, but you never see pictures of it. You
No,
never
no,
see
no.
any, you never see anything about it. Like you think there'd be like, oh, a video, like, yeah, I'm here in the Disney tunnel,
Yeah.
going to work kind of thing, but you do not see that on YouTube or anywhere.
And I also think Disney fans don't want to mess with the illusion.
Right.
They like it in their little world of
Right. They make it, like Disney is this evil corporation, and maybe it is in some ways. We do know
Mhm.
it controls most of the world at this point, but the fans are just as much a part of it as the
Oh,
company
for
itself.
sure. Hmm. They keep it going for
Right.
sure.
Right. A little bit of a cult thing going on there.
Yeah.
I'm not judging though.
No, it's okay.
All right. So did you just basically worked on the Splash Mountain, right? You didn't work any of the other rides in any
Yeah,
times or anything?
it was just Splash Mountain.
Right.
So it was just you had different points where you do different things, loading the ride, unloading the ride. There was a point where you had to watch all the cameras. And I don't know if I'm sure you've heard this before, but they called Splash Mountain Flash Mountain for a while because
Yes, yeah.
yeah, people would be flashing when the camera went off when you went down the water flume.
Right.
And so we had to stop the ride and then, yell at the people. And it was like a very big, and then there was times where kids would just get off the ride in the middle. Like they were afraid to go down the flume.
Right. They started freaking out. Yeah.
So they would just get off and the parents would stay on the ride. And then we had to run through the mountain with all the singing animatronics. And there would be us running through looking for little Jimmy. He's scared. It's just a wild thing. I'd be like to the parents, don't worry, Jimmy will be at the end of the ride when you get off.
Now you found all the kids. You never lost any, right?
Yeah, we found them all.
That's good. That's reassuring to know. Because there is a lot of myths too about ghosts in Disney World too.
Yes.
And, a lot of them are centered around, I guess this makes sense, is the Haunted Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of myths about that. I would imagine when the park is closed, it's got to be kind of creepy too, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we had to ride even Splash Mountain, which is not a scary ride. We had to ride it once before it closed to make sure nobody was there, So a cast member had to ride it through. And we'd ride by ourselves. It was so super creepy to just ride this ride by yourself. They'd even shut the sound off. So, it's just these just
that's
faces.
Gonna be really weird. Yeah.
Oh, so weird.
When I was a little kid, when I went with my parents, probably the first time I went, we were on the It's a Small World ride.
Mm-hmm.
And it got stuck at one point. And I thought my father was going to lose it because he just kept hearing the It's a Small World song over and over again for 20 minutes. We were sitting there.
And all of a sudden it's a nightmare.
Yeah, and then every verse, it got a little more creepy as we were sitting there listening to it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I remember too is one time when I was in Disney World, we were waiting online for Space Mountain, and they had to reset the ride. Which I
Mhm.
guess whenever there's an issue, they have to reset it and run a test run
Yeah.
before guests can get on. But they turned the lights on so you could actually
Oh,
see the roller coaster, which
isn't that
you never see
wild?
in Space Mountain, and that was like weird and again kind of creepy in a way.
Yeah, it does. It breaks the illusion. All of a sudden, you're like, "Where am I?" It's just, yeah, it's
Right.
very strange.
Right. So, one of the myths about the Haunted Mansion, and I think this more applies to Disneyland than Disney World because I believe they have it in both locations.
Yeah.
Is that some of the bones were actually real bones,
Oh,
and it
really?
turns out there is a little bit of truth to that. There's one skull in Disneyland that is actually a real skull
Really?
that was from a hospital or something. They donated to it, and it's
Oh,
actually
that's odd.
a legitimate skull, which is a little creepy when you think
That is
about it.
kind of creepy. What was the logic there? I guess
I,
they
I
just wanted to be immersive. I
I
don't know,
guess they wanted it to be as
authentic.
real as possible, but there apparently is one skull in the Haunted Mansion on Disneyland that is a real human remain kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
And the other
It's
thing with
creepy.
Haunted Mansion that's kind of I know has happened a lot over the years is people want to have their ashes dumped there.
I know, that's so strange, right?
Right, and that's like a whole big thing, and they actually like you said, like when you were talking about with if a child got out of the ride kind of thing,
Yeah.
they had to they have to shut down the ride if they see somebody doing this, if they see somebody sneaking in with ashes and
Oh, right,
dumping
and
them.
there are cameras everywhere, so I can
Yeah,
imagine that's something they look out for. Imagine, what do? They just, like, sweep them up? Like, how do they?
they have a hazmat team that actually
Oh,
comes in and clean because they are they're human remains,
right.
and it's a little creepy. I mean, I get if you're a Disney fan, that's kind of a cool thing, maybe to be like forever in Disney, but
Yeah, people do love the Haunted Mansion, I could see,
yeah,
they're
yeah, and
gonna
that's
stay.
and isn't there? I think this is an urban legend, but isn't it supposedly Walt is one of the faces that don't people say that they think one of the singing heads or something like that is
Oh,
supposed to be
maybe,
Walt?
right. Yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
those things all over the place, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's amazing the technology with some of the stuff they do there. It really is.
Really, it
Even like the
is.
Hall of Presidents and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, they're really cutting edge on everything. I mean, those animatronics, when they first came out, they were just, like, mind-blowing, you know?
Right. I mean, 50s and 60s, some of these things were
Mhm.
built, and like, nobody had ever seen anything like that before.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The other thing, talking about other innovations, there's a whole big thing with Disney about the way it's set up. That it's depth perception and stuff like that, so you can
Mhm.
see things appear bigger than they are and smaller than they are. But the other thing that they do is they apparently put smells in the air. So-
Yes, which, is really brilliant because
Right,
smells take you there and sell things.
right,
And one of the most, I think, iconic smells of the park is, like, the bake shop and the popcorn, like, these
right,
2 things that when you go down Main Street and they just pump it into the air, like you said. It's not, I
right,
don't even think it's real, to be honest with you,
right, right.
the bake
Yeah.
shop. It's just, and it lures you in, and I could smell it right now. And as a matter of fact, some of them are they're so recognizable, they make candles, like, they even make a Pirates of the Caribbean candle that, like, there's an actual smell that people will
Wow.
buy it, and then they make all these sorts of candles just based on the smells of Disney.
Do you have any of those candles?
I did I actually did have the Pirates of the Caribbean one. That's how I know.
Does it smell like Johnny Depp at all?
I
Or
mean, not really. And the weird thing is I don't even know if that it's a great smell because there's, like, water. It's like a watery,
right, right.
it's not like it's just, it brings you there. Like,
I
it
mean,
brings you to
pirates
that boat
shouldn't
ride.
smell good. I mean,
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It smells a
yeah,
little musty. It's like,
right,
you're on a boat. It's not a delicious smell, but
right.
it works.
So I got a couple of events here that I just noticed that couple of historic events that happened at Disney World that I
Okay.
don't know if people would readily associate with Disney World. Do you know that the Beatles officially broke up in Disney World?
I did not know that.
Apparently, when in 1974, so this was a few years after they actually split up, but they were still business partners and they were suing each other, and there was all kinds of legal stuff before
Mm,
they officially legally broke up the band. They were all supposed to meet in New York City and sign, a contract to do it, and three of the Beatles did, but one
mhm.
of them, John Lennon, was in Disney World at the time. So the other three signed the contracts and signed all the paperwork to break up the Beatles, but they had to send it down to Florida, and they had to find John Lennon in Walt Disney World
Oh,
and get him
wow.
to sign the paperwork. So actually, the Beatles broke up in Disney World.
I feel like Disney does not want you to know that.
That's that's not a happy thing,
No, I
especially
don't
the
think so.
Beatles are associated with Disney now. They have stuff on Disney Plus now, the Beatles documentaries and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of interesting
That's wild.
And then this one kind of blew my mind. Do you know the famous quote of Richard Nixon? People got to know if their president's a crook. Well, I am not a crook.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually at Disney World.
What do you mean? He was there when he said
it? In Disney World doing some kind of function. I think he was bringing guests there or something like that. And he gave a press conference at Disney World. And that's where he said, I am not a crook.
Oh, I have to look that up. Is there any way that you would know that or no?
I don't think so, because I think they just put a big draped area behind them, so it looks just, like the White House or whatever. But yeah, it's that's kind of an interesting little bit.
I don't think that line is in the Hall of Presidents. I think they left that out. Yeah.
Probably not. Apparently Nixon and Walt Disney were actually pretty friendly.
That's funny.
They're both from California, so that makes sense, So let's address the biggest urban legend about Disney and about Disney World and about Disney the man.
Mm-hmm.
When you were down in those tunnels, did you ever go into a freezer and find Walt?
No, but we did look,
You did look?
I don't even know who came up with that. Was that just did Disney put that out just as a little teaser?
That's one I've heard, this predates the internet and everything. This was always something you always heard. Oh yeah, Walt Disney, he's frozen. They keep him downstairs at Disney World. They're going to bring him back one day.
Did they even have that technology back then? I think they have it now.
They have it now. You can get, there's rumors that Ted Williams, the baseball player, was frozen too.
Oh, okay.
But the family actually denies that. The Disney family, for the record, Walt's family does deny that he is frozen and in the basement at Walt Disney World in the back of the freezer next to some ice cream and some pork chops.
I think they just hoped for that. They were like, maybe if you could freeze anyone, it would be Walt.
Right. And it's kind of interesting too, because there's a couple of different versions of it. One where he's frozen, one where it's just his head.
Oh.
Which I don't know what you do with the head.
No, I don't know.
You kind of need the whole body kind of thing.
Yeah, that's strange.
But so what is your favorite, I guess, myth or fact about Disney World that maybe most people don't know? That
people don't know?
Yeah.
Well, the one that I always grew up hearing was that no one dies in Disney. That was one.
Right.
And I thought that one was true for a long time. Even when I worked there, I feel like I confirmed it with people. It was like an obsession with me. I was like, is that really true? And how is that possible? Because, there's lots of ways to die, is that you're pretty much dead and not it's not questionable.
Right.
They said it was true. I don't think it could be true now, but they said they just didn't pronounce it.
Right.
There. So that was always fascinating.
Right. I mean, one of the things that, people do say about that is, well, if somebody got injured at Disney World, obviously you would take them away from Disney World and bring them to a hospital or some kind of medical facility.
Right.
And I mean, I would assume a place as big as Disney World, there must have been doctor areas and first aid stations.
Yeah, there was definitely taking a couple kids to the first aid area. Right. That was actually, by the way, you were allowed to break into your costume could travel to the first aid area because it was emergency. But
obviously.
Yeah. But that was one of them. I think that was just because I wanted it to be true. So I was like, yes, of course, nothing bad can happen in Disney World.
Right. This is a magical place. No one dies here.
Yeah.
Except for Walt, who's frozen down in the basement. Thank you for listening to The Last Radio Show. Check us out on Facebook at The Last Radio Show.
The Last Radio Show.
The Last Radio Show.